Welcome to the Networking with Michelle podcast, the show dedicated on providing you the how-tos of marketing and networking strategies. Here we believe in the Jim Rohn quote, success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Networking with Michelle. I am your host, Michelle Gomez. I'm especially excited about today's interview for many reasons. One, about 6, maybe 8 months ago, I did a survey and I asked you, I was like, what do you want to hear from me? What kind of content, what kind of interviews do you want? And one of the topics that got the most feedback was, how do I write a book? Book marketing, self-publishing, Amazon, yes, no. And I am here to tell you that today's interview with Tom Corson Knowles is going to cover all of that. Please check out his YouTube channel. He has over 400 videos pertaining to that. Whether this is your first book, if 2017 is your goal on, hey, I want to write this book, I have this book in me that I want to produce, this is the interview for you. Maybe this is your second or your third book, but you made some mistakes. You want to do some things better. You're in the situation that I'm in, right? This is the interview for you. Tom, he does a variety of things when it comes to book marketing. He's written just about a dozen books. He's helped more than dozens of authors when it comes to their book from A to Z. This man knows what he's talking about. So I definitely want to tell you to get your pen and your paper ready. Take notes. Listen to this episode again and again. Listen to it now. Listen to it when you're done writing your book. Listen to it when you're about to market your book. This is the episode for you. Once again, please visit his website. He has a great blog and a YouTube channel. Also, a special shout out for Natasha, Crystal, Cecil, for constantly supporting me, sharing my posts on Facebook. You are appreciated. Thank you. It means so much to me that you believe in my message and you're willing to share it with your friends on your platforms. You are appreciated. Also, special shout out to Delana Byrne, who reached out to me on LinkedIn, who's been following my journey, and she decided to reach out, and we jumped on the phone and we had a great conversation. So special thanks to you and just the listeners overall. You are appreciated. I am more than accessible to get in touch with, so never hesitate when it comes to something that you want to hear and see from the podcast, or maybe it's something deeper than that. I'm here for you. I'm all about connecting with the people. Before we get started, definitely want to say that this episode is sponsored by Line 25 Consulting, empowering entrepreneurs to develop their personal brand by leveraging relationships and expertise. It's all about thought leadership these days. Line 25 is a marketing firm that focuses on social media marketing, networking strategies, and thought leadership. So if you're looking to go deep instead of wide when it comes to your knowledge, you can visit line25consulting.com. That is line25consulting.com. Without further ado, Tom Corson Knowles. Hey everyone, welcome to a new episode of Networking with Michelle. Today's special guest is Tom Corson Knowles. He is the owner of TCK Publishing, an international publishing company specializing in mass market trade books. And I am so happy to do this interview because in 2014, when I was doing all kind of research, I jumped on YouTube and I watched hours of Tom's videos. So I feel like this is coming full circle. And here we are today. Tom, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Awesome, Michelle. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I learned so much from you when it came to publishing, book marketing in 2014. So thanks for reaching out to me and thanks for keeping it going because you have like 400 YouTube videos now. But how did you get started?
Yeah, I started in college. So I was a freshman in business school at Indiana University. And, the dream of all my classmates in business school was to go to Wall Street and become investment bankers, right? They wanted to work 100 hours a week in a cubicle on Wall Street. And that to me just seemed like a nightmare. I mean, I couldn't imagine living a life like that. But that everyone around me, that was their passion. That was what they were so excited about. They couldn't wait. Like every conversation was about their next interview, their next internship, getting to Wall Street. And it just seemed crazy to me. The whole thing just seemed like this really bad dream in my life. And I realized, look, if I keep doing what I'm doing, that's where I'm going to end up, right? I'm going to end up in some kind of job that I really hate, that's not fulfilling for me. And so I realized I needed to take a step back and figure out what I really want to do with my life. And so I started just writing a document on my computer, which is just like my personal manifesto of what I thought it meant to be successful. To have financial freedom, awesome, right? Lots of money, live where you want, do what you want with your money. That just seemed like a no-brainer for me. But I also wanted, good health and good relationships and to do work that mattered, to be able to spend time with people I liked and enjoyed being with and had good values, right? All the stuff that was important to me beyond just the money. And so I was writing about that in this document, and I shared it with a few people, and they said, this could be a book. You should get this published. And so I tried to get a traditional publisher. Tried to write the book proposal and query agents and so forth, and get a book publisher, and just failed miserably. I mean, for 6 years, this was like I was banging my head against the wall trying to get a traditional book deal, and I failed, right? And like 99.9% of authors who try to go the traditional publishing route, they fail. And that's what I did. And so, about 5 years ago, a friend just mentioned in a casual conversation, why don't you just self-publish this book on Amazon Kindle? And I had no idea that was even possible. I had an Amazon Kindle since the day it came out. I knew that ebooks were huge, and I loved my ebook reader, right? But I didn't know it's possible for me. It's just, a broke kid in Indiana from my home, from my bedroom, could just upload a file to Amazon and become a published author. I had no idea that was possible. And so when I found out about that, I did all the research I could. I read everything I could about it, and I published my first book on Amazon. And I was so embarrassed I had to self-publish my books. I didn't tell anyone what I'd done. And so I didn't tell anyone at all. No family, no friends, no one. And I logged back into my account a month later. I saw I had 11 sales. And that was like huge. I was so excited. I was like, man, if I can sell 11 books without telling anyone what I'd done, imagine what I could do if I treated this like a real business. Because I had been blogging for years before that, Michelle, right? And it took me more than 3 years to make my first 11 sales on my blog, right? So to do that on Amazon in 30 days without any marketing, without any effort at all, it just seemed like a huge, huge opportunity. And so I really treated it like a business from that point on. Every morning, like 5:30 a.m., I would wake up. I couldn't wait to get to my computer, to write my next book, to work on editing my next book, to publish my next book, to market my next book. And in my 10th month, self-publishing, I had my first $12,000 month from ebook royalties alone, just on Amazon Kindle.
Okay. Wow. Impressive. What was the name of the book, the first book?
So the first book, it is now called Rules of the Rich. I've rebranded it since it was first published.
So when it comes to writing, I guess your first book has definitely been different than the books that followed, but it's the beginning of the year. I feel like everyone has a book in them. It just sounds like a daunting task. So how do you get focused when it comes to either writing your personal story or sharing that business knowledge or industry knowledge and putting it into a book?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think for everyone, the creative process is a little bit different, right? But the actual steps you take to get there are the same, right? Depending on the strategy you're going, right? If you're self-publishing versus traditional publishing, the steps will be slightly different. But the actual creative process of writing the book is the same for everyone. And so the key is to realize that, first of all, millions of people have done this before you, right? So if you've never written a book before, it's something that literally millions of people all over the world have done. So it's not that big of a deal. Right. And I say it's kind of funny, right? But it's true, because it's not that big of a deal. I think a lot of people take it way too seriously. And like I did when I first wrote, it wasn't even a book. It was just like a document. And someone said, this could be a book. And I was like, this couldn't be a book. That's so complicated. That's so big. That's so fancy. I could never write a book. Right. But the truth is, a book is just a collection of words in a document. Right. So if you've ever written a blog post, or if you've ever written a tweet, right? A book is just a whole bunch of tweets strung together in an organized, coherent way, right? It's not that complicated. And so I think the biggest barrier a lot of people have, Michelle, is that the kind of mental block to it, like this mental mindset that it has to be so complicated, it has to be so difficult. And so just to give you an example, the average kind of nonfiction book today is about 150 to 250 pages. So you're looking at 40,000 to 60,000 words. So a 40,000 word nonfiction book right? If you only write 1,000 words a day, which anyone can write 1,000 words in an hour, 1,000 words a day, that's only 40 days to get the first draft of your book done, right? So anyone who's an average or below average writer can finish the first draft of their book in 40 days, right? It just takes that commitment to putting the time and effort into it, right? And then it takes the strategy of actually, how do you be productive and how do you be effective and how do you actually, do what you say you're going to do, right? Because I think the hardest thing for most people, Michelle, is, we say, I'm going to write this book, I'm going to start this business, I'm going to start, whatever it is, and then we never get around to doing it, right? We just kind of put it off and so forth. So, I can share with you that the system and the process that I've learned to make this process much faster, much more effective. But it really boils down to you have to have that commitment to yourself to actually doing it. So you have to find out, why is this important for you to do, right? Like, what's going to keep you getting up early, staying up late, working on it to do that work, right? Especially if you've got a job, if you've got kids, if you've got 2 jobs, right? If you're a busy person, you have to realize, what are your priorities in life, right? And then focus on your priorities. And so, I'm not saying everyone should write a book, but if this is a priority for you, if you look at your life right now, Michelle, and you say, in the next year, right, I could finish a book and have it published. What kind of impact would that have on my life? How would that help people? How would that help my life? How would that help my business? Right? And take a look at the future and say, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 50 years from now, how would I feel about having written a book and published it this year? Right? And see if that helps inspire you to create that future, right? Because if you just keep doing what you've always been doing, you're going to keep getting what you always got, right? And that's what most people get stuck, right? We just get stuck in these old habits. And so if you've never written a book before, writing a book can seem like this big daunting thing, but it's really just following the simple process, setting that clear priority and knowing that this is something really important for your life. It's going to make a big difference for you. It's going to make a big difference to your readers. It's going to make the world a better place.
I like how you stated that obviously millions of people have written a book, right? Because I know for myself, a couple of years ago, once again, that daunting task, doing all this research, trying to get all of these pieces together and create this puzzle. And then I feel like once I wrote the book and I started marketing it, it was like everyone has written a book. And it's something about it kind of transitions into your network, into your group of people, whereas like before you're actually surrounded by plenty of authors. And then it's kind of, I guess it's like an everyday thing, so to speak. It's like once you've done it, it's like, wow, there's a lot of authors out there, and then people that want to write a book, and then you're able to help them as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's one of the great things you can do, right? If to be successful, hang around successful people. So if you want to become a published author, hang around people who are published authors, right? And you'll see how they talk and how they think and how they act. And, for them, it's like no big deal. They might say something to you like, oh, okay, thanks for the call. It's great talking to you. And I'm going to go write my book now. Right. And like they say it like no, so nonchalant, so cavalier, like it's not a big deal. Right. And that mindset rubs off on you. Right. Because if you think, oh, it's such a big deal, it's so hard, I could never do that. And all your friends are just like, oh, yeah, just wrote a book yesterday. No big deal. Right. Then you start to, become like the people that you're around. And so if you hang around successful people, you'll start to have this successful thoughts start to fall into your mind. You can't control it, right? You're going to be affected by the people around you. If you hang around a ton of people who, do drugs, right? You're much more likely to do drugs. If you hang around a ton of people who go to opera, you're much more likely to do opera or go to the opera, right? And if you hang around a lot of people who write books, you're much more likely to actually write your book. Right.
Absolutely.
So that's absolutely a great way to do it. So there are writers groups, all across the world. You can find any kind of major city, even small towns. You can find a writers group, and you can go there and join. And a lot of times they'll have like retreats where you can actually, sit down, have quiet time dedicated for you to actually work on your book, and then share some things you've written and listen to other people and give them feedback and get feedback on your work. And so that's a great thing to do. But you don't have to have that. You really just have to have that commitment to yourself that this is something you really want to do, and then go for it.
So I have my book or my book outline. Where does TCK Publishing fit in between the self-publishing and, the major traditional publishers or books we see at Barnes and Nobles?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's a good question. So there's so many ways to publish a book nowadays, right? There's so many different distributors and retailers and distribution options. And so for self-publishing, for most people think is, I just go to Amazon, kdp.amazon.com and upload a file and I've got my ebook published, right? And some people think just of like, a physical book, like they want a paperback book. And so you can do that too. There's print on demand nowadays with the physical books. So that's essentially where you just upload a file to a website, like createspace.com, and they will go ahead and print your book for you. So you send them the right files and they'll just print your books on demand. So if you want to order 1 copy or 5,000 copies, you can do that. And then every time someone buys your book on Amazon.com or another retailer, the CreateSpace or your print on demand service will just print the book that day and then ship it to the customer for you and then just pay you royalties on that, right? So that's kind of traditional self-publishing. And then traditional publishing with a big publisher is generally, it's very different, right? So that's, 99.9% of authors like me will never get a book deal like that. Or will fail when you try. And so that's not to discourage you, but honestly, most people make a lot more money self-publishing, right? Because a traditional publisher is only going to pay you 8 to 15% royalties, whereas with self-publishing, you're going to get 70% from Amazon, right? You can sell a $2.99 ebook as a self-published author and earn about $2.06 per copy. Whereas you can sell a $25 hardcover book with a traditional publisher, and you're lucky if you get $2 a copy, right? So you're going to make more money selling a $3 ebook than a $25 hardcover book as a self-published author versus being traditionally published. And, you look at the volume and the shift in the industry right now, ebook sales are just booming, right? From 0 to over $6 billion a year in the US in just the last couple of years since Amazon Kindle came out. And so, really all the growth right now in the industry is in digital ebooks and digital audiobooks as well. Print book sales are actually declining globally by, about several tens of billions of dollars over the next couple of years and over the past several years. And so the big opportunity for new authors is in online distribution of digital ebooks and digital audiobooks, right? And also online sales for print books. So a lot of the print book sales are actually online now. So over 60% of book sales in the US are online sales for physical books, right? So there is that opportunity there for self-published authors to sell ebooks, audiobooks, and print books online and to create a real sustainable business for yourself, right? And so with a traditional publisher, the benefit of that, right, is that they're going to have distribution into bookstores, so retailers, which most people think of like Barnes and Nobles, right, and independent bookstores. But really the biggest retailers of books are things like Costco and Target and Walmart, like these big box retailers, right? And so that's awesome that you can get in there with a traditional publisher. You can still get in there if you're self-published, right? You can get into any store, anywhere in the world if you're a self-published author. It just takes more work and effort to get there, and it's not necessarily very profitable, right? So, why go call up Walmart and Costco and all your local independent bookstores when you can really just focus on marketing your books on Amazon and make the vast majority of your money there with a lot less effort, right? And so that's what most self-published authors are opting for. Traditional publishing is great for some folks if you can get the deal in the first place. And if it makes sense, and if you don't want to go the route of self-publishing for whatever reason. So those are kind of the two main options, right? And then so TCK Publishing, where we come in, is, I never imagined I would start a publishing company, right? It was never my idea. Like I wanted to just publish my own books. I just wanted to be a self-published guy. But what I did, Michelle, is I started teaching other people online how to write, publish, and market their books through my courses. And so I've since taught over 40,000 students through my courses, like on Udemy, for example, how to, write, publish, and market their books. And a lot of my students ask me, Tom, hey, I love everything you're teaching, but, can you do the cover design, the formatting, finding the editors, the book descriptions, the SEO, the metadata, the distribution, the retail, marketing, promotion? Can you do all that stuff for me? And I was like, well, that sounds like a lot of work. That sounds like a whole publishing company, right? And so I decided, I'll test it out with a couple of people and see how it goes. And so we really just started doing what I had done for my own books, basically just self-publishing, right? Doing ebooks on Amazon, using KDP Select so we could get more money from our ebooks and more people reading our books. So like a lot of readers on Amazon can actually borrow your book for free, but you as the author get paid and you get a lot more exposure that way, a lot more readers. We started doing the print on demand for physical books. We started doing the digital audiobooks, and it went really, really well. And so since then, we've grown, we've expanded. And so we've actually done deals like foreign language rights deals, for example. So we've had some of our clients' books translated into Chinese, and we're working on a deal in Korea right now. in French and other languages, right? And so this is more like a traditional publishing firm, right? So the way it works, like when the folks in China buy the rights for one of our books, they pay us like a $4,000 advance, like a traditional book deal. They pay us in advance on royalties, and then they print like 10,000 copies of the book for the first run. And then if they sell out those 10,000 books and they want to print more books and sell more books, they pay us a percentage of royalties on top of that. It's like 8%. And it's a scaling rate. But anyway, it starts at 8%. And so we're actually getting these deals now where we're actually more like a traditional publisher. So we're kind of in this middle spot where we don't have distribution into the largest retailers. It's really not a priority for us. Our priority is really focused on online marketing, right? It's about, how do we take your brand as an author, Michelle, and get it out to more people online? How do we build your email list? How do we build your website traffic? And how do we sell more books for you online so that the next time you launch a book or release a book, we can sell more and more and more copies of it, right? So one of the things that we've learned is that it's really all about building your brand. Right. So it's, as a traditional publisher, they just do one book deal at a time. Right. For you, it's just a product on a shelf. Right. They've got 600 slots for the year. Right. And they need a product in young adult romance. Right. And so they're going to publish a young adult romance book this year. Right. And so they're going to take, out of the whatever submissions they get, they're going to take one, they're just going to put it on the shelf. Right. For us, it's a very, very, very different approach to publishing. Our approach is, hey, you're an author. That's cool. Let's see how we can build your brand, right? How can we take you and your ideas and your content, your message, your stories, and create a serious brand to sell millions of books over your life as an author, right? And so it all starts from that perspective of what is your message, what is your story, and how can we build that brand for you? And so for some folks, they just have, really just have one book, right? But it's really rare for our clients. So a lot of our clients have like several books. One of them has like over 60 books right now. And so the reason why that's so much different is because, it takes oftentimes several books to be successful, right? Traditional publishers never know it's going to be successful. No one ever knows if a book's going to be successful before they publish it, right? No one knew 50 Shades of Grey was going to sell that many copies, right? You just don't know. There's so much luck involved in the industry. But what we absolutely know from the data, if you look at sales figures on Amazon and other retailers, you can really clearly see that a couple things, Michelle. So first of all, if you have an author and you compare, let's say, a novelist. So let's compare like a romance author, two romance authors, right? Exactly the same market, exactly the same niche, everything's the same. But one of them has one book published, one of them has 7 books published. The one with 7 books published is going to, on average, earn twice as much money per title, right? Now, if you take those same authors and you had that book with the author with 7 books, write those 7 books in a series, they double their earnings again in comparison to an author with 7 books that are not in a series, right? And then if we take that and add on other factors, you can 2x and 4x and 5x your sales. And those little differences over time make a huge, huge impact, right? You do 2x times 2x times 2x times 2x a couple times and you get into the thousands really fast, right? And that's how you build a brand for an author, right? So it's not just publishing one great book. For a lot of folks, it's publishing several great books in a row, but it's also about, building your email list, right? Getting a great website, and then also other kinds of marketing, content marketing. So not everyone has to do this. So for example, like a lot of our clients who are novelists, we recommend they just focus on writing books. They don't really have to do any promotions. They don't have to do interviews. They don't have to write articles or blogs or whatever, because the fiction market is so much bigger, right? And so if they can focus more time on getting more books out, right? If they can publish, instead of 2 books a year, they can publish 3 or 4 books a year, they're going to increase their earnings so much faster, right? Whereas for nonfiction clients, you really do have to focus on some kind of marketing, right? You have to have some kind of platform, right? Because you need traffic, right? It's a smaller market for nonfiction books, and it's still a huge market, but it's smaller than fiction. And you have to stand out from the crowd because everyone says they're an expert in, carpet cleaning or coaching or whatever, right? So you have to stand out from the competition. And the way you do that is by using your strengths when it comes to marketing. So a big thing we work on with our clients, Michelle, is find out, okay, what are your strengths, right? And so, for example, if you love speaking, right? I love speaking. I don't know if you can tell. So I do tons of interviews. I do podcasts and radio. I do YouTube videos. I've got my own podcast show. I speak at events all the time. I speak on webinars. I'm always speaking. And so with my speaking, I've been able to leverage that and take it and get it out to more people through YouTube and through SoundCloud and through other channels, right? And so that's what you want to do with your own strengths. So you don't have to be a speaker, right? One of the problems with a lot of authors and marketers out there, Michelle, is they'll say, you have to get on Twitter. You have to tweet every day, right? And the problem is, like, if that's not your strength, it's not something you love to do, if it's not something you're committed to learning and to doing really well, it's not going to work for you as a marketing vehicle, right? And so there's nothing wrong with having a Twitter account. But if that's not your focus when it comes to marketing, day in, day out, I wouldn't expect that to sell a lot of books for you or to grow your business, right? So what's really going to grow your business? Well, it's going to come when you find that perfect point where your strengths and your passions meet a skill set and a distribution opportunity to get your message out to more people, right? So for some people, it's like YouTube and podcasts, where they're speaking is their strength. Other folks, writing is their strength. And so they can do blog articles on their own site. They can do SEO. They can do guest articles on other sites. They can write for like Huffington Post and Time and Business Week and all these other online publications and journals and magazines, right? And get more traffic and more exposure for their brand that way. So there's all kinds of things you can do when it comes to marketing. Like, there are literally thousands and thousands of ways to market books, to market a business, to grow your business, right? And so for me, it's not about finding every single way you could do it, right? It's about finding the one or two ways that you can do it that you are so excited about that doesn't feel like work for you, right? Because all good marketing is long-term marketing, right? Like Coca-Cola, they're over 100 years old right now, and their ads are still running. This company has been running for ads for over 100 years, nonstop. Why do they keep running ads, right? Because they work, and because all good marketing is consistent marketing. And so, one of the funny things for me about the publishing industry, Michelle, is, like, especially with traditional publishers, like, they'll have a client and they'll have a book come out and they'll do this book launch, and they'll hire a PR firm for $5,000 a month for 3 months, and they'll do a 90-day promotion for the book. And after that 90 days, you never hear from the author ever again, right? They just stop marketing. To me, it just seems like so insane. Like, that whole business model just seems insane, especially when you take into account that, like, the copyright registration for your book in the United States, at least, lasts for 75 years after you die. So you're guaranteed ownership of your work for 75 years after you're dead, which means you can pass it on to your kids, your grandkids, your great-grandkids, right? You can leave a legacy, right? And as long as there's a retailer like Amazon out there who all they have to have is your files, right, in their computer system, and they'll distribute your book all over the world. They'll sell it for you. They'll pay you royalties. So you can have a legacy from it. You're basically guaranteed income for 75 plus years after you're gone, right? I don't know any other business model in the world where you're guaranteed income for 75 plus years.
But
right?
then you only market it for 3 months.
Exactly, right? And so that's why I think the consistency is the key. And that's why I think you have to focus on your strengths, because it's going to be really hard to be consistently tweeting 10 times a day, every day for the next 10 years if you don't really like that, right? For some people, that's like a nightmare, right? So you don't want to find the things in marketing and business that are a nightmare for you. You want to find the things that you love to do and just focus on that. And then take that thing you love to do, take that skill you have, and figure out how to maximize that. So if you're going to do YouTube videos, you better study the heck out of how to do it right? Really study, really learn every detail, everything you could possibly do to make your videos more likely to be seen by more people, to get your message out to more people, right? And that's how you become successful, by focusing on a few things and doing them better than, I don't want to say better than everyone else, but better than you did them before. So you're constantly improving, you're constantly getting better, you're constantly learning the best practices to build your platform, right? To build your marketing in a way that works.
I have so many questions I want to unpack. One, we mentioned Amazon. We're all familiar with Amazon. They're definitely a leading retailer when it comes to books. But what about that individual? They're like, well, I want to have my book as a free I want to have my book as a download on my website, maybe $10, $15, $20, because they feel like they're going to get a larger percentage. What should they publish on their website? Go on Amazon?
So if you have 100 million customers right now on file with your website, and you have all their credit card on file, and they're one click away from buying your book, then I think that's a great idea. And if not, Amazon has that for you.
Okay.
Right? And they're only going to charge you 30%. That's not bad. Trust me. 30% of 100 million potential customers is not bad, right?
So stick with Amazon for the credibility and mass market.
Exactly. So it's distribution. right? So in any business, let's say you got a product, right? I think a lot of people get confused with books, right? Especially with the internet, because it's like, well, who's behind my book and where is it being distributed, right? But it's just like a grocery store, right? You go to a grocery store, you see ketchup on the shelf. Are you going to buy Heinz, or are you going to buy, there's a random bottle next to it that you've never heard of before, right? And the problem is when you set up your own website, you're no longer in, let's say, what, Costco grocery or whatever grocery store you shop at, right? You're no longer in this big grocery store. You're at like some little mom and pop retailer with like one product, right? The ketchup store that only sells one brand of ketchup, right? No one goes there, right? So unless you have this massive website with massive, and the problem with that, Michelle, is that not only do you have to have tons of traffic in order to make that model work to sell books on your own site, you have to have tons of traffic, and you have to have a way to consistently get traffic, which often means paying for ads, right? Then you have to have a way to convert that traffic into sales, which means an enormous amount of time and energy spent optimizing every single page of your website to maximize your chances for making that sale. And not only that, you have to have upsells, which means you have to not just have a $20 book you're selling on your site. You have to have a $197, online training course and a $1,000 plus package that you're upselling on top of that. And because the reason is because if you don't have all those things and it's not really well tested, it's not converting really well, you're never going to be able to get traffic profitably to sell a $20 book, because everyone else in your market has those other things and they're paying for ads every day, right? And so you're competing with people who have, let's say, for example, you're only selling a $20 book on your website, right? So your value per customer is $20, right? Someone else is selling the $200 online course, and they're selling the $1,000 coaching product, and they're selling all these other things. They have a membership site, right? Their average customer order might be $200, $300, $400. I know some folks who are like $400 in the health and wellness space. Every time they get a customer, the lifetime value of the customer is $400. If you're selling a $20 book in the health and wellness space, you will never, ever be able to make a profit, right? If you're doing paid advertising, because their average order value is $400 and they're spending, $100, $200 on ads to get one customer, right? So unless you can spend $100, $200 on ads to sell a $20 book, it just doesn't make any sense, right? And so it's really just about understanding the business model, right? And that takes a lot of research, takes a lot of experience, takes talking to a lot of people, right? But so if you look at the business model with books, the most profitable way to do it is to get distribution from people like Amazon and so forth. And, there is a way to be very profitable selling a book on your own site, but it requires those upsells. It requires a really good strategy, right? Which is way beyond, there's no way we could ever talk about it in just an hour-long interview. There's all the strategy that goes into that, right? And so, Amazon is kind of like that low-hanging fruit, right? It's easy, it's right there, and it's a ton of money, it's a ton of distribution, and you can always expand from there, right? So I know folks who sell their books on Amazon and do very well, and they also do their funnel on their own website where they'll do like a free plus shipping offer for their book. So the book is free on their site. You would just pay for shipping, and then as soon as you check out and pay $7 for shipping or whatever, then they take you to their upsells, right? And they go from there, and they drive paid traffic and other kinds of traffic to that page. But it's more complicated, right? And so if you're just a beginner starting out, you've never made any money online, you don't have a website yet, and your website isn't getting a ton of traffic, definitely start with Amazon because it's just so much easier.
Earlier you mentioned for fiction books, you can do 3 to 4 books a year. What do you think is a good average for nonfiction books in a 12-month period?
It really just depends on the author, right? So like I said, we've got some folks with just like one book, like Heal Breast Cancer Naturally by Dr. Veronique Desaulnier, selling tons of copies. Unlimited Memory by Kevin Horsley. We sold like 5,000 copies in the last month. And these authors just really have one book, right? So there's no right or wrong way to do it. I think the key is to focus on your audience, right? To always be focused on your customer, right? So who is your audience? Who is your customer? What do they want? What do they need? What are their biggest problems, right? So after you write the first book, you're going to get some great feedback, right? You're going to get some reviews. You're going to get some readers who are going to email you, give you feedback on the book. And hopefully you're going to be building your email list if you're doing things right. And then what you can do is you can survey your audience. And you can say, hey, thanks so much for downloading my, gluten-free recipe book, right? I'd love to know what other books would you like to read? Or what other things could be helpful for you, right? And you can ask them a survey and ask them to fill out a form to tell them more about what they want. And then based on that, you can figure out who your audience is and what they want, and you can figure out what your next book should be from there, right? So that's kind of the best way to do it, is to start with your audience, right? And then go from there.
With social media, a lot of people believe, post it and they will come, which is not always the case. But what does a healthy book marketing budget look like for 2017?
You know, every audience is different. So rather than focusing on the budget, I like to focus on the brand and the audience, right? Because so the thing with like a marketing budget, Michelle, is that there are so many types of like there's two things you can spend on marketing. You can spend money, you can spend time, right? And then you can spend money wisely or you can spend money foolishly, right? And you can spend time wisely or you can spend time foolishly, right? And so it really all starts from your strategy. Who is your audience? What is the brand for your book? So first of all, it's like, who is your audience? Who is your customer? Who is your ideal reader? Like really, who are they, right? Is it like a 35-year-old mom with 2 kids who loves yoga and you're writing a book on yoga, whatever, blah, 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 right? Is that what you're doing? Like exactly who is your audience? Exactly who is your reader? And so the easiest way to figure this out, Michelle, is just go to Amazon.com, type in the keywords most directly related to your book, right? So like yoga for moms, if that was your example, right? And find all the best-selling books on Amazon in that market and read every single review of those books and take notes of what your readers love and what your readers hate in that market. And you will find out really fast who your readers are, what they want, what they don't want, what the existing books in that marketplace are offering them and what their existing books are not offering them, right? And you'll be able to see gaps in that market. Once you have that figured out, once you understand exactly who your reader is, then you create your brand for your book, right? And so the brand is simply your message. That's it. Your brand is your message. It's your promise. For a nonfiction book, it's your promise, right? So the promise might be, if you're a stressed out mom, this is how to get relaxed, how to have inner peace, how to be calm, how to be super mom, right? How to do it all and still love your life and still be amazing and still have great sex or whatever, right? Whatever that promise is for your particular audience. So you find your audience, you find your ideal reader, you create this brand promise, and everything in your marketing campaign follows from that promise, right? Because once you have that brand, that's when you figure out, okay, so where do the people who want this hang out? What websites do they hang out? What blogs do they read? Where do they hang out on social media? What social media sites are they more likely to be on? Is it Pinterest? Is it Instagram? Is it something else? And then from there, you can focus on your strategies. How do we reach these people, right? But you have to start from your audience. You have to start from your brand, because if you just start with a budget, you're just going to throw money away. If your budget is $1 or $10 million, you're going to spend it, right? Because that's what you do with a budget. You spend it, right? Right. And so really, you just have to focus on the key things that actually make the difference. And then you can realize, okay, then you could say, okay, well, what resources do I have available? How much time do I have? Who do I have on my team? Who can I ask for help? How much money do I have? And then from there, figure out, where are the opportunities here, right? And that's how you really launch a book. That's how you market a book consistently. So figuring out what resources you have, who is your audience, who is your customer, how do we reach these people, right? So some of the low-hanging fruit is stuff like bloggers. Finding all the top bloggers in your market. Create a list of all of them, every single one, and then contact them all and say, hi, I'm Michelle. Here's my new book. Here's what it's about. I think it'd be awesome for your audience. I'd love to offer you a free copy if you're interested. Just let me know, right? And maybe only 5% of people ever respond. But if you email 100 bloggers, you get 5 of them to respond, 5 of them write a review on your book. That's a lot of exposure for very little work.
With the right audience.
Right. And for exactly, it's all about the right audience, right? Because, who cares if you're on the Today Show? I know so many authors, so many entrepreneurs who were on the Today Show and sold nothing or almost nothing from it, right? Because no one cares if you're in front of a million people if there's not the right people. Right? You want to get in front of the right people. You want to get in front of people who care. The number one reason people buy books is word of mouth still, right? And so word of mouth happens when people love what you do. They love your book. They love what you do. The way you find people who love yoga is you find out where the people who love yoga hang out and you get in front of those people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes perfect sense. I just finished reading The 5 Love Languages today, and I posted it on Facebook, and it's been nothing but engagement and discussion, and people are like, oh, I need to buy that book. I've been meaning to buy that book. I just bought the book.
Right. Great book, by the way. Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for reminding me. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And this book was over 10, maybe 20 years old. This is an old book. So yeah, right. Definitely word of mouth, and just having with social media, it's kind of putting a friendly reminder out there. People are like, yeah, I've been meaning to buy the book. And some people are like, I just bought it because I've been hearing so many things about it. So, and I think that's true, whether it's a new book or an old book.
Absolutely.
Now, with your experience, say whether it's a new author or maybe they're a veteran, they're two, three, four books in, do you think hitting the Amazon bestseller or any bestseller list, should that be um, a goal, a strategy behind that? Is that still relevant for authors?
Definitely. So Amazon has 28,700 bestseller lists right now on their site in the US and UK. And I know that exact number because we count every single one of them, right? So actually I created a tool. It's called Bestseller Ranking Pro. And I created it just for my publishing company first. And I created it because the first thing we do when we publish a new book or even think about publishing a new book is we do the market research, like the stuff I was just telling you about, going to Amazon, finding the best selling books in that market, reading all the reviews, right, studying the books, studying the covers, studying the authors, studying all that stuff, right. And so I created this tool to make that process a lot faster for us, and I decided to offer it to other authors because it's so valuable. And so you can check that out at bestsellerrankingpro.com. So that a tool kind of gives you everything, every different category in terms of like how big it is and how competitive it is, and what do you how many books do you have to sell to be number one in fashion design versus some other category, right? And that is important, right? It's important, but it has to be relevant. So the goal isn't to be number one necessarily. The goal is to get your book in front of the right readers, right? So you want to be on the most relevant categories for your book. And so the good news is because there's like 28,000 lists, there's probably 10 or 20 or 50 different categories that are potentially relevant for your book, right? So then what you can do once you found them is take all those, let's say 20 different relevant categories for your book and organize them by competitiveness and say, these are the least competitive and these are the most competitive, right? And you can start in the least competitive categories, right, where you can rank well, right? So ideally you want to be in the top 20 because the 20 is like the first page results. So on the first page, just like in Google, first page results are going to get way more clicks. So that means way more sales. So you want to aim for the top 20 in your categories on Amazon when you launch your book. And then as your book sales increase, when you do a book launch or as your marketing just gets better and better and you sell more books, you start to scale up to more and more competitive categories. So you can still rank well in those categories, but get more exposure because more readers are browsing them. Does that make sense?
Yes. When it comes to, is there a good time to translate your book into an audiobook or a foreign language? Should that be an automatic, or how do you make those decisions as well?
So for audiobooks, every market's a little bit different. There's a couple things you can do. So first of all, you can just pay the narrator directly. So let's give you an example. For a 40,000 word fiction book, which is about 200 pages, we're looking at, trying to make sure I have my numbers right, about $800. Yeah, anywhere from $600 to $800 to pay for that narration, right? So it's not very expensive, right? It's pretty cheap. So you can do that, or you can do a 50-50 split, and that's where you find a narrator who was willing to narrate and publish your book for you, and you just split the royalties 50-50, right? And so there's no upfront cost for you. So in that case, there's no risk, and so it's like if you can ever find a deal like that, just go for it because there's no risk and only upside, right? And it's usually like a 7-year deal, so you can always get the rights back after that time, and you can republish it or do something different with it later on. So you're not locked in for life. So that's the opportunity for audiobooks. So I recommend most folks and most markets would do that. For translation, that's totally different, right? It's a very different market, very different opportunity there. So a lot of what we've done with our books is just had other publishers in other countries make offers on our books, and they pay us the advance and the royalties to get them translated. And so that for us is like a no-brainer. Like someone's going to pay us for these rights for, simplified Chinese only in China, right? It's like it's a very tiny market. It's very tiny rights in this one little place, and they're going to pay us a good amount of money for it. So that's great. Paying to translate the book yourself, I almost never recommend. So the main language you want to go for would be Spanish. So English and then Spanish, right? German is another potential opportunity. So those are just in terms of like the numbers. They have the most people worldwide speaking those languages and the most likelihood. I mean, Chinese also, but the problem with that is that it's like, how do you get distribution? Especially like if you're not familiar with that market, it's really tough to get distribution, right? So that's why I wouldn't necessarily most people even consider that. So generally, you're talking about Spanish, right? Spanish and English. Now, if you write in a different language, definitely get it translated into English. Like that's the number one translation you want to do, because that's where the biggest market is going to be in the U.S., right? So out of all English ebooks sold on Amazon, like 85% are in the U.S., right? So that's a big market, right? And it's a lot of money. It's like $6 billion plus in sales, right, each year just for ebooks. And so yeah, I mean, you just have to kind of figure out, based on your sales, based on your audience, based on your platform, based on your marketing strategy in those countries and those languages, what makes sense for you.
Cool. Appreciate that. Something that I've been going back and forth on. Just a few more questions. What are your plans for this year, 2017?
I got so much. I mean, really just focus on building the publishing company, right? We've made a lot of progress with that recently. All these new deals we're working on, some cool marketing strategies we're working on now, really getting things more dialed in and systemized. When we launch books now, we have a whole system process that we go through that's really been working well. And growing the team. So hiring on quite a few new people, training the team has been a lot of fun and a lot of work. So that's really where the focus is. And then also, like with Bestseller Ranking Pro, for example, we're coming out with a whole new stream of updates for that. So we're going to have so much more data. Like it's going to be, I'm just like so excited. I had a call just before this with my tech guy, and we're doing the coolest stuff. So we're going to be having like the market sizes. So you'll be able to see like, it's not ready yet, but you'll be able to see like, okay, if you look at like romance ebooks on Amazon, you'll be able to see exactly how many sales in the entire market. So
Oh, wow.
197 million ebooks per year in this market, right? And then you can look at thriller and see like 47 million ebooks per year in this market. And you can look at children's books and see, right, the exact amount, because we have all this great data now from Amazon. It's really, really cool. So, and then you'll be able to see trends too, like, which markets are growing and how much are they growing by and which markets are declining. And so that's really, really cool. And then I'm also working on like an advanced training course for authors, which it'll take several months to get ready. But that will be like a complete training course for authors on everything from writing your book, fiction and nonfiction, to self-publishing it in ebooks, audiobooks, print books, and then all kinds of marketing and branding stuff, and also all the stuff we're learning about, like foreign language rights deals and other opportunities to license your content to other distributors and so forth. So those are just a few of the things I'm working on in 2017.
Gotcha. And how can people get in touch with you?
So the best place to go is ebookpublishingschool.com. I've got a free video training course there that walks you through the process of publishing your first book on Amazon and starting to build your author platform and launch your book. I also have some awesome checklists and downloads and resources at tckpublishing.com. That's our publishing company site. And on that blog there, you'll find so many helpful articles on everything from writing to publishing and marketing your book like a pro. And then also have the podcast show. So every single week we interview a best-selling author to find out what's working right now in their business to grow their income and increase their fans. And that's at publishingprofitspodcast.com.
Great stuff. Plus the YouTube channel. So I'm going to definitely have that in the show notes. Tom, I want to acknowledge you once again. I've been able to follow you for 2, maybe going on 3 years now. So I've learned so much from you when it comes to just, once again, the book publishing, the marketing, productivity tips. Has some incredible resources. So please, everyone, make sure you check that out. Last question. How do you define success?
That's a good question. So, for me, it's, there's a lot of answers to that. So one definition I love is from John Wooden. Coach John Wooden is like the best coach ever in history, probably. He says, success is just about doing your best. So if you did your best in a game of basketball, but you lost, if you did your best, that's success, right? And that makes so much sense to me, right? Because it's not about winning, right? No one's going to be like on their deathbed, like, oh, I wish I won that basketball game. I wish I had more money. I wish, whatever, right? It's about doing your best. Like, if you did your best, there's nothing more you could have done, right? And so that's the definition I like to think of every day. So when I'm looking back at the night right before I go to bed, like thinking like, was I successful today? Did I do my best? Did I try my hardest? Did I give it my all? Was I totally present in my relationships with other people? Did I tell people I loved them that I was with? Did I write the best words I could possibly write today, right? Did I have the best interview today with Michelle I could possibly do, right? That's, for me, a really awesome definition of success. Kind of the more like monetary, like typical version is like, yeah. So I think, having money is important. I think having great relationships is important. I think having work that's meaningful is important. I think doing something that you believe in, that matters, that you think is going to make a difference in the world is important. And I think learning and especially teaching is important. So not just, doing all this stuff and making all this money and having great relationships or whatever, but also just sharing your message with people, whether that's your kids or whether that's through a book or through interviews, or to find some way to teach other people what you're learning about life. Because life is challenging. Life is difficult. Like, we all have our own struggles, right? And so when you finally find something that works for you, right? Like when you finally find out, like, oh, I finally found out how to write my book. I finally found out how to have a marriage where I'm actually happy, right? I finally found out how to, raise kids that, are good people and have good values. And whatever it is that you've learned about life that you think is important, pass that on, because that information is really, really valuable.
Yes, absolutely. Hey, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this interview with Tom. Remember, I believe in you, and a personal connection leads to an influential network. Thanks for networking with Michelle.
Thanks so much, Michelle.